Well, welcome. How you doing today, my friend, to the podcast?
Thank you so much. I'm doing well, doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's good to have you on. I'm looking forward to this conversation. So
Thank you. Likewise.
let's dive in and have some fun. So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice that I've ever received. That is a hard question, Keith. But I would go with one that I think has served me well is give it a try, because what's the worst that can happen? And this was the piece of advice that really stuck with me. And that was to answer the question. That most of
Mm.
the time we're like, oh, what's the worst that can happen? But we stop there. But right, I was told to answer the question because it takes the fear out of it. And when you answer the question, you realize that in most cases, if you give it a try and it doesn't work out, the worst that will happen is that you end up in the same place where you are today. Right. But we often don't finish answering the question. We just go like, oh, what's the worst that can happen? And we still feel all the fear and anxiety. So I would say that's a big piece of advice that I received that I try to share with my children and other people is like, hey, what's the worst that can happen? But let's not just stop there. Let's answer the question so you can mentally get it out of your head and get it on paper, whatever you need to do, and realize, yeah, it's worth the risk, right? It's worth giving it a shot.
I always wish that there was a reset button in life. So if I answered a question wrongly, I could just reset and you forget like what they had before. Or like in Men in Black, I could take a little pen out and zap
Yeah.
you. So whatever I just said, we could try that again. But you can't do that.
So true.
I'm curious. I looked at your bio and I was just so impressed with the work that you do and the people that you've worked with and what you've committed your time and your life to. But I'm curious, as you think about your life, who are some people who served as role models for you? Tell us what about them made them role models and just kind of give them a shout out. Give you a chance to kind of thank people who've helped you on your journey.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for this opportunity. First I would start with my parents, right? Because they were the day in, day out mentors, role models, coaches, guides, and parents, right? And what I mean by that is, providing the discipline, but also providing the knowledge and the wisdom, and most importantly, providing the love that gave me the confidence that I needed to do some of the things that I've wanted to do. Um, I always give excuse me, a shout out to a friend of mine, Corey Pittman, who was very transformational in my life. Unfortunately, Corey was murdered during his college years. And, that had a huge impact on me because he was one of the first peers that I knew. My parents always spoke to me about success and higher ed, but Corey was the first peer that I knew who really said, hey, like, you need to take your education seriously.
Right.
And when I was a freshman, he was a senior and he just took me under his wing and was always talking to me about, taking the right steps and making the right decisions for your future. So Corey definitely. And then when I got into my professional world, and again, it's hard because I know I'm leaving so many people out, aunts, uncles, and everyone.
Right.
But just if you're listening, auntie, uncles, can't name everyone right now. But then I think about my professional life, right? And every supervisor that I've had, I still remain good friends with to this day because they taught me a lot and helped me a lot. One that was tremendously impactful was my mentor, Lou Tice. He's the founder of an organization called the Pacific Institute. And that's where I really got into the work of mindset and leadership and culture transformation and learned a lot from Lou. And that's what really led me to start my own consulting firm.
That's awesome. So I want to take us on a journey about your personal story because you have an interesting background and the way you have poured into certain aspects, especially higher education. Kind of tell us about what led you to what you do now and how you got there. Cause I'm just curious because usually along the way, there are moments, forks in the road that guide us down certain paths. So I'm just kind of always curious to find out my guests' stories and the decisions they made and why they're doing what they do.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'll kind of start here. I'll try to make it brief, but I struggled as a college student. So that's number one. And then when I say struggled, I mean really struggled. It wasn't academic struggle. It was really about trying to learn this higher ed landscape, right? And all the things that come along with financial aid and, and just all these different things. So, and then trying to balance time, right? Wanting to be extremely social and make all the parties and hang out with all the people and date all the ladies, and also balance that with trying to get the homework done and the academics. And what I found was there were people there who really went the extra mile for me to help guide me. But what I also realized is that that made me extremely lucky, because I had a few people who were doing that, that it wasn't a part of the system. And that's when, again, I would say my mindset really started to shift and looking at systems, like why these systems of support that are supposed to be there, you're paying this money, you would expect to be there, really weren't there. As I was in, excuse me, as I was there, I began having these conversations with the professor. And when I first went to college, my goal was to never return back to my hometown. And a lot of that had to do with, as I mentioned, the violence that I had experienced and that my peers had experienced during that time. And so it's like, this is my ticket. I'm doing this. And once I graduate, I'm never going back. I'm going to, start a career somewhere else in the country. And I had a really influential mentor there who really started to challenge me around this idea of, he would say, I can hear in your voice and in your stories how much you love your hometown. And yet I always hear you say that you don't plan on going back. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going back. Right. And he said, but you love it. I'm like, well, yeah, because we're so this and we're that and we're authentic and the people are just, it's like interesting. He said, have you ever thought that one of the reasons why your hometown may struggle the way it does is because when people like yourselves go off to get training or education or knowledge or wisdom, you don't return back home? And man, that hit me, really tough. And so after that, I come back home and I started getting into different work around higher education and youth access. So running programs in high schools and helping students get into college and universities. And even during that time, what I started to realize again was the systems piece that was popping up. That got me really interested in the work of organizational development and really looking at how do we create these cultures and these systems that, again, doesn't require the superhero all the time, because the superhero is not always going to be there, or the superhero is going to need to take a day off, right, and do the systems that we're creating to actually support the whoever we're trying to serve. So I got really involved in looking at those types of things. As I was doing that, I was introduced to the Pacific Institute, and that really connected with another piece of my life that I had just began at that time, which was public speaking. And so a good friend of mine and myself, we started a public speaking company called 3E Motivations. Shout out to 3E Motivations, where we were traveling the country speaking mostly to youth and speaking at youth conferences and really trying to help young people, because again, we had just come out of college ourselves. During that time, again, that connected with this work that I started to learn about through the Pacific Institute, which was really about mindset transformation and leadership and culture transformation. And from there, that's where I really launched into this career of consulting. And so after doing that work for several years, I started to notice that there was a gap. And that was the Pacific Institute's wonderful work was video-based curriculum, and tremendous. I mean, talk about life-changing curriculum. And it was canned, if you will, right?
Sure.
2-day program, 4-day program. It wasn't dynamic to be able to adjust to the in time needs of the clients. And so one day I'm having a conversation with Lou Tice, and I'm sharing with them that what I'm seeing and experiencing out in the space is that people needed some customized work in addition to the 2-day video program. Some organizations you work with really need to go deep on trust and communication. Well, our curriculum just didn't allow for that. So I'm trying to convince him that this is the work we should do. And he sits back and he says, I believe you. I'm like, what you believe? Okay, great, great. He goes, and I have no interest in doing that. So I'm confused, Keith, right? Like, what do you believe me, but you have no interest in doing that? And he says, yeah, this is my business model. This has been very successful for me for 40 years. And I have no interest on changing the business model, but I think this is a great opportunity for you. And that was really the encouragement and the push that I needed. And so I started Potential Unleashed Consulting, and we really focused on, again, the customized approach to leadership transformation and culture transformation and diversity, equity, inclusion. When I first started off with Potential Unleashed, my goal was really to just focus on leadership and culture. And quickly, I was brought back full circle to my time in college and realizing that if organizations want to have really strong cultures, the strongest culture that they can create is a high performing culture of belonging, right? And that only happens through good leadership. And so the three, to me, when I think about those three things, I don't see them as separate. I don't see them as, binary. I see them really, again, as this collection of strong leaders build strong cultures, and a strong culture is a culture that is a culture of belonging, where everyone believes that they could bring their best. Everyone feels like, they're in a space where they belong. And so we would see these cultures, these organizations. I had the opportunity to work with some amazing organizations. And it was interesting because when you would dig deeper, let's say 93% of the people loved the organization, loved the culture. It's the best place in the world to work. I was always interested in, yes, that's awesome. And I want to talk to the 7%.
Right.
And I wanted to know, why weren't they experiencing the culture like everyone else? And it was interesting because when I would start to do that work, I quickly found out that so often the 7% looked the same or came from similar backgrounds. And it was often, again, women or people of color or people who had some type of disability. They were the people who weren't experiencing the culture like everyone else. And so that's really kind of how I came to this place.
That's awesome. I want to jump back on something you talked about, because I just finished a degree in organizational change. And so that's always been one of the things that really hits me really home, because I work with, I think, a lot of times culture that's organizations that are dysfunctional, that could be better than they are. And you talked about higher education. I spent most of my church ministry with elementary schools and dealing with the education system before college.
Uh-huh.
And then I started dealing with a little bit about high school when my son was in high school. And they kept asking me the question because, being an African American, they'd hold these college preparatory classes. It's like, why are not more African American parents in this college prep class? I'm like, because they didn't go to college. I mean, not none of them did, but most of them didn't. And don't understand what you just talked about, the higher education jump, the fact that there's a disconnect between how you prepare for college and high school and get to college and succeed.
Yes.
And for me, it started even before you got to high school. It started in elementary school. How do you prepare kids for high school and elementary school? Because when I talked to some of the kids, and I was in urban areas too, the Milwaukee, Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, and I'd ask the kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I remember one girl said to me, I just want to be a video dancer. I'm like, a video dance? You mean like the girl who dances on like Drake's video? Yeah, like that. I'm like, that's no career.
Yeah.
First of all, I don't think you can dance that well. And second of all, there's no lifelong, wealth in that. So how do you, as you talk about going back to your home, dealing with the violence, how do you begin to shift that culture to prepare the kids to say, yes, I have the aspiration and dream for higher education?
Yeah. So one of the things that I stopped doing, so thank you for that question. I get this question a lot when I'm talking to parents, especially, and also educators. And part of that is I stopped asking kids what they wanted to be when they grew up. Because what I found out is that most of us will only answer based off of what we've been exposed to, right?
Right.
But you get, doctor, lawyer, athlete, entertainer. That's pretty much it. What I do for a living, I could not have answered this question when I was 18, 19, or 20, right? Because I didn't even know that this existed. You know what I mean? Like, what? You get to talk to people for a living? Like, oh, that's, it helped people solve problems. I didn't know that was something, now there's shows out there about consultants and stuff like that.
Right.
Back then, right? I didn't know anyone. So here's what I do. I start off by asking them to envision their life at 25. And I just ask them certain questions. Where do you see yourself living? And I go deep, right? Are you in an apartment? Are you in a condo? Are you in a house? Are you still at home with your folks? Do you have roommates? You know, like, what does this look like for you? Do you see yourself married? Do you see yourself in a relationship? Do you see yourself, you know, living with 3 other people? Are you living by yourself? You know, and I just start walking them backwards to tell me what type of job you have. Like, how are you living? You know, do you have a career that you love and enjoy? Is it a job that's just paying the bills? You know, what are you doing? I asked them about transportation. How do you get back and forth to the places that you want to go? Are you driving a car? Are you, you know, using public transportation? And again, there's no shame or judgment in any of these answers, because if you pick New York, you know, you might be walking or using public transportation. So, and you're probably going to have much higher rent, right? So, you
Right.
know, I tell them, like, there's no judgment on this. You might be living in an apartment, but you're living in New York City, a place that you always wanted to live, and, you know, and you don't own a car, but it would be foolish for you to own a car. But here's the key, is that after they create this picture and they tell me what it looks like, I ask them the question, can you tell me how you got here?
Mm.
And I have them work backwards. And that's when they start making these connections for themselves. A 17-year-old doesn't really want to do homework, right? Like, that's not what they want to do. 17-year-old Jahmad Canley didn't want to do homework, but when I can work it backwards, and I recognize that me doing this assignment increases the likelihood that I'll get into the college that I desire. And I don't even really want to go to college per se, but college will better my chances and my likelihood to get the career that I desire, which is really all about me getting the lifestyle that I desire. I'm going to turn in this assignment. And what I find that we often don't do is help kids really make those connections. And so the assignment becomes just about the assignment. And I don't want to do the assignment. It's beautiful outside. I want to go do this. I want to do that. Right. You know, those types of things. So that's what I learned to do, was to stop asking kids, what do you want to be? But start asking them, what do you want that lifestyle to look like? And again, because they're dealing with so much, right? They've got social media, they've got all these different things that they're looking at. So I know some people who I would call young people, but you know, they're young adults. They're 30 and under. And their lifestyle looks so different than what I would have envisioned for myself at that age, because they're exposed to more. So for them, it's about, you know, 4 vacations a year. And I'm like, whoa, like 4 vacations a year. You know what I mean? I could think about the years, Keith, that vacations weren't even, it was a dream, right? Like, oh,
Exactly.
it'd be nice to go on a vacation, but, you know, I'll take this 3-day weekend and, you know, we'll do something. I mean, and they're going to Tulum, and they're going to, you know, Jamaica, they're going to Greece, and they're going to, you know, Morocco. And that's the lifestyle that they wanted to create for themselves. And again, that's not for me to judge. That's great. I'm glad that they're experiencing the world, but they look at it through a different lens, right? And so for the young people, I think that's what the conversation is. It's not about going to school to get good grades so that you get into a college so that you can go find a job and work there for the rest of your life. Like, that just does not resonate with a lot of young people today. But when you ask them, like, what does that lifestyle look like when you're 25 and you're 30? Are you traveling? Where are you going? You know, again, are you driving a scooter? Are you driving a car? You know, like, what does that look like for you? And you ask them the question, tell me how you're getting there, right? And that's the piece that I think resonates well with them.
That's great, because it really leads me into your book, because you just talked about creating the idea. So tell us what led you to write the book, Idea from Overcoming to Becoming.
Yeah. So what led me to write the book? Frustration. And when I say frustration, this might sound weird. Frustration with myself. And here's what I mean. I have long struggled with a push and pull mentality. And I do the work that I do not because I desire to be famous or be a celebrity. I do the work that I do because I desire to be effective in what I believe I'm called to do, which is to help people really unleash and fulfill their potential, which is why I named our company that. And so I've always strived to be the best and most effective at that, right? Is helping people. And that's, again, if this is the calling that you're going to, I'm just a firm believer, whatever it is that you're doing, that you choose to do it to the best of your ability. With that, because I actually have an adverse reaction to popularity or celebrity and stuff like that, that's why I say it's been a push pull, right? And so one day I'm talking with a friend of mine, and he says, "Well, you should write a book." And I said, "No, no, no, don't want to do that, right? No, no, then it's book signings and all. Yeah, no, I'm okay, right? Not going to do that." And time goes by, about a year or so goes by, and we're having lunch again, and he's asking me, so what's your biggest frustration right now? And I said, well, when I speak, I'm frustrated that after my speech, I can't get to all the people who want to get to me. And he says, right. He says, I've been with you multiple times and I've seen, you try to, and that's just a part of who I am, right? When I speak and after I come off the stage, there's normally a line of people who are waiting to speak to me. And, if I can, I will stay and speak to every single one. Right. Because that's what drives me is, again, not the standing ovation, but the fact that people really want to implement something that I just talked about. So I want to give them that. He just said to me, Jahmad, you are never going to be able to speak to every person. And I said, yeah, I know, I get that. He said, but that's your frustration. He said, I see it in you. He said, you'll stay an extra hour and a half after your speech just talking to people because you want to try to cram all of this information in. He said, you realize if you had a book, you could put something in their hands. And you can put a book in a lot more hands of people than you can having a one-on-one conversation. And so honestly, Keith, that's what led me to write the book was that conversation. And I was so mad at him, right, when he said that, because I didn't want to write a book, right? But when he said, like, hey, you're the one who said that you want to reach people. You're the one who said you want to help people change their lives. You're the one who said you're frustrated that you don't have enough time, right? You can only speak so many places. And you can only, again, reach so many people through that. But hey, he was like, don't be mad at me, be mad at yourself. This is what you said you wanted. And so that's what led me to write the book was I wanted to provide a guide for people that, one, I may never get a chance to speak in front of, or two, even in a 45 or 50-minute keynote, you can give people a piece, right? But how do I give them something that they can take and really apply to their lives? So that's what led me to write it. That's why I structured the book the way that I did. I've received so many emails and messages from people who are like, oh, I love the book. I finished the whole book, because that was by design. It's the reason why I self-published,
Right.
because initially a lot of publishers wanted to pick up the book. I didn't realize this, but they were like, you're a rare find in the fact that you not only are an author, but you speak. And that for them was a very attractive thing because, I didn't realize it. They said most authors are very much introverted. They're like, so it makes it hard to sell a book because it's hard to put an introvert on a speaking tour, right? A book tour. They're like, oh, but this is perfect. The problem was they wanted me to write a book that was not the book.
Okay.
That, right? Put this in it, put that in it, or, oh, this should be, so many pages. My goal was I wanted to put a book in people's hands that I knew that they could finish. I said from the beginning, this book will be no more than 100 pages. Oh, well, research says that, books that are between 150 and 220 sell best. Okay. Thank you for that information. And this book will never be more than 100 pages. I'll never write a book that's more than 100 pages because my bookshelf is full of books that I got pretty far into but didn't complete,
Right.
but I found some good nuggets in the first 5 or 6 chapters. And then I was reading the next book. Right. So I wanted people to be able to finish the book because the book really serves not just as a book, but the way that I wrote it and designed it, it serves as a guide, if you will, where they are answering questions as they move along to really create this blueprint, if you will, for their ideal picture. So that's what led me to write the book and to write it the way I did.
I love that. And your book, you break it into 3 parts: thinking and ideas, breaking barriers that prevent you from achieving your ideas, and closing it out with realizing your ideal outcome. So kind of walk us through that concept of when someone reads this book, you're helping them move from the idea to actual implementation of the idea. So kind of walk us through kind of your overall arching thought about that.
Yeah. I mentioned that I, public speak, and I am not a big fan of motivational speakers.
Right.
Right. So maybe that's what has helped me in my career, because, someone hopping up on stage and telling me, here are the 3 things that you need to do to change your life is great. But we'll have another speaker in next year doing the same thing. Right. So, so that's why, again, the book is designed the way that it is. The first third of the book is about why it's important to think in these ideals, right? And so I'm explaining the research behind it, because all of it is based off of cognitive science, brain research, and how we think as human beings. And so helping people understand those pieces. Then the second part is really, again, removing those barriers that get in the way. One of my favorite chapters in the book is chapter 5, where I talk about fear, because fear is such a powerful barrier. And I think it's key for people to understand, not to just say you need to remove fear, but to give people tangible steps and processes on how to do that. Right. So like in chapter 5, not only do we talk about fear, but I talk about breaking fear down. I tell the story of one of my friends who wanted to go back to college but kept saying, oh, I just don't think I'll be able to do it. I'm afraid, wasn't using the words I'm afraid, but was everything that they were saying was that they were afraid. And have been talking about this goal for years. And finally, one day we're at a barbecue at my home, and he brings it up again. And I said, well, hey, why don't you take the step? I don't think I'm ready for college, right? I don't think I'm ready to go back. I've been out of school for all these years. I don't think I'm ready to go back. And, wants to go back to get his master's degree. And then when I finally asked the question, what part about it is causing you the anxiety or the hesitation, what we found out was it was the writing aspect. He had heard that for this master's program, it was going to be a lot of writing, and he didn't feel he was a strong writer. But Keith, that's different than college is going to be too hard.
Right. Exactly.
Because now when we pinpoint writing, it was like, oh man, there's all types of things that we can do to support you in that, right? You can even take some courses at the community college to strengthen your writing before you go back to get your master's degree. But fear wants to appear so large, right? It attaches itself to this thing, because when you just think, oh, college is scary, well, that's huge. That's massive. But when you say, I'm actually fearful about the writing aspect of college, oh, we could get really strategic around that. So that's what, part 2 really dives into, is really helping people overcome some of those barriers. And then part 3, again, is about, okay, now let's create for you, what is your ideal for your family, for your community, for your church, for your health, for your business? What is the ideal picture? And let us share with you proven strategies that have helped people, teams, and organizations for years, when they've decided this is what we want, actually move towards that and get that, right? And to acquire those things that they're actually desiring, that life that they're desiring. So that's how the book is broken down in those 3 steps. So again, people are working through these different things as they're moving through the book, because I didn't want to just put another really good motivational book in someone's hand with some really good theories. I wanted people to really walk out of there saying and thinking, and I can do this, but then coming back later on and saying, not only could I do this, but I did this.
Wow, that's amazing.
I did this.
No, I love that story, because I remember what stopped me from going back to my higher degree was there's a lot of reading to do. And like usually I'll start reading a book, and then the book is on my lap and I'm asleep. So doing a higher degree means lots of reading, but you get over that fear you talk about, and you can really see that you can go farther than you think you can go once you deal with some of the issues that are holding you back.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, think about it, even with the use of technology, right? I mean, audiobooks and all these different things. Like when a person pinpoints it's the reading aspect, we help people break that down. Well, yeah, because most of us were taught and raised that the way that you read is you sit down and you hammer through this book for 3 hours at a time.
Right.
Right. Versus how do you get in 2 hours of reading a day? How do you do 15 minutes, in the morning? How do you listen to, part of it on audiobook on your drive into work? How do you, knock out another 30 minutes during lunch, right? And where are you keeping your notes and all those things? And then how do you do another 30 minutes after dinner? And now all of a sudden you've put together 2 hours of reading a day. But oh my goodness, the way that we were raised was you got to sit down at that table, right?
Right.
And knock out this 2 hours of reading. Like you said, 45 minutes in, I'm like you, I'm knocked out, I keep going. I've read this page 4 times now because every time I wake up, I go back and start again. I know this page well, though, Keith. This
That's
page
right.
I know well.
And you have those page
It
nightmares.
seems
It's
familiar.
horrible. Yeah. Oh my. So I'm curious. You got this book going on. You got all the things you do in your career. What are you most excited about in this season of your life?
A few things. One thing is, well, I'll go personal if that's okay
Sure.
first. One of the things that I'm really excited about in this season is really watching my children, and my my children, I have 4 children, and they huge range in age, right? So 13 to 4. And so watching them at the different levels, watching the older ones who are now utilizing the things that we've tried to help them with. And so watching them use reasoning and, and try things and, step into uncomfortable situations. That's extremely exciting for me. Watching the younger ones also, right, as they're starting to move into school now and all those things. So that's really exciting for me just to see this, because every time that we've had a child, it's almost like what you said earlier. It's almost like hitting the reset button in a sense
Right.
of, huh, let me try this a little bit different with this one, right? Like, I wish I didn't say that to the other one, to the older one. So maybe I'll try it a little bit different with this one, because children allow me personally, I'll speak for myself. They allow me to stay in this space of remembering that they're seeing the world for the first time. And it gives me this sense of hope because there's this sense of purity of, right, there's no bias, there's none of this jadedness that sometimes happens with, experience, that they're experiencing the world for the first time. Their questions are pure curiosity because they're trying to acquire knowledge and wisdom. They're not setting you up for, asking you a question to set you up for this other thing. It's just they want to know, like, why is the grass green? You know what I
Right.
mean? And why can't I eat it? It looks like the lettuce that we eat for dinner. I don't understand, right? So I'm excited about that because family for me is so important. And, I've been blessed to have just an amazing, wonderful wife who is not only my wife, but my best friend. So I'm excited about that, just the continuous journey of the family. Professionally, what I'm excited about is the team at our firm, the innovation, the great ideas, and the way that they are constantly pushing me forward and pushing the organization forward, pushing the work forward. I'm really excited about that. I'm not the biggest adopter of technology, and they're keeping me excited about technology, right? When all this AI stuff first came out, I'm like, oh, this is no, like
Right.
right, like this is gonna be, horrible and everything else. And I'm excited because they are constantly showing me new ways that we can use these things to make the world better and to use it for good. And it's like anything, right? I see the sword above your bookshelf there, and it's not about the tool, it's about the hands that it's in and the purpose in which a person wants to use it. right?
Right.
To protect and build beautiful things or to be destructive. And so I'm excited that, again, they're keeping me very optimistic on how these technological tools can be used for building beautiful things that really help the world. So I'm excited about that. And I can tell you, 9 months ago, that would not have been my answer. I would not have said like technology and AI. I'd be like, oh, we need to stop this now.
Right. Exactly.
How do we get ahead of this? Haven't we all seen,
We've all seen
Judgment
we
Day
all
and
saw
Terminator?
iRobot. Yeah.
Right. We've seen The Matrix with how many movies people have, right?
When did we get the message?
So yeah, so those are the things I'm excited about. Again, watching this family continue to grow and the kids really step into their own. And then on the professional side, again, watching that family continue to grow. And so we can help more people, help more organizations really, again, reach their potential.
You sort of tapped into it, but to just kind of hone in a little bit more. My favorite question to ask my guests is this one. What do you want your legacy to be?
I want my legacy to be that I gave people the best of me. I want my children to know that though I work with people all over the country, I want them to know that they get the best of me. And that from the very beginning, I shared, when I was sharing this vision with my wife, I said, I will not sacrifice my family for this career. And so I want that to be a part of my legacy. Even more than that, I also want to help produce great human beings into the world, right? My children are my legacy. So that's a huge part of that. When I get the notes, yes, my children thrive academically and that's wonderful. But when I get the notes about their kindness or their bravery, or when they correct, they have the not only the bravery, but also the grace to correct a teacher who is using language or terminology that might be harmful. Like those are the things I'm like, yes, right?
Right.
Like that's a part of my legacy because they'll move forward with that. And then I also want my legacy to be that I helped as many people as I possibly could.
I love it.
That I helped them fulfill their life potential, the best that I could.
That's great. As you wrap up our conversation, what are some key takeaways you'd like our listeners to remember from our discussion today?
I would say to not stop at the dreaming part, right? So this is whether you are the CEO of an organization, whether you are a parent, whether you're a baseball coach, whether you're a kid who's listening, the dream part is extremely important. We need that picture. And I find that so many people stop at just the dreaming. One of the things I talk to people about in my own children is manifestation. Like I want people to know that the things that pop into your head, you can actually manifest. You and I are sitting on furniture that started off as someone's idea,
Right.
but they didn't stop at the idea, right? They manifested it. The bookshelves behind you, the paintings behind me, everything that we look at, it's a manifestation of someone's dream, someone's idea that they had. And so I want people to know that they have the ability to manifest those things. So not to stop at the dream. I talk to a lot of leaders who tell me what their dream is, but for some reason or another, and I often know what they are, but for some reason or another, they've allowed themselves to stop dreaming. And they just now are managing, right? It's like, oh, well, I would love to do this, but well, no, let's go back to that because that's what gets you up in the morning. That's what's going to get you to show up differently. That's what's going to excite you. That's what keeps you up at night, thinking about like, how can you better do this? But yeah, but that would be my dream, but that's not how I think people should live their lives. Right. Go after your dream. Know that you have everything in you to help manifest it. And we rarely are going to do it alone on on our own, right? So you find the people around you, you'll find the resources, you'll find the network, you'll collaborate, but know that again, that's in you. And the reason why I say that, Keith, is as I close, is years ago, my wife asked me, what is motivating you? Why is it so important to you to help people with this piece? And I said to her, I truly believe that there's someone out there who has answers to some of our biggest problems. Cure for cancer, energy crisis, you name it. But it's an idea in their head. And if they don't believe in themselves and they don't believe that they can actually manifest it, it will remain right there. And the world suffers as a result. If in the work that I can do, I can give people the tools and equip them and the confidence to say, I can actually start working towards this goal, then again, I think it's a life well lived.
I love that. So where can people find your book, Idea from Overcoming to Becoming, and learn more about you and follow you on social media?
Yeah, thanks, Keith. So Ideal you can find on our website. It's www.potential-unleash.com/store. So if you just go to our website, you'll find it there. You can also find it on Amazon as well. So just, type in Ideal and Canley and it'll pop up. And the second part of the question.
Where can they find you on social media?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, though I don't know much about Instagram. I'm there, and the team is there, right? So the team is like, we have to be on Instagram. I'm like, okay. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram are the social media accounts that I'm on. Again, I know that I'm on Instagram, but I'll just tell you, I don't spend much time there. But the way that the team has it all set up, everything is linked. But LinkedIn and Facebook are where I respond mostly to, questions or messages that come in and stuff like that.
When you break out your Running Man video, it can be on TikTok.
Yes. But I don't think they're ready for that.
Yeah, it may not be.
I don't know if they're ready.
Break out the full Conley move there. MC Conley.
Yeah, I mean, I stay ready.
Well, thank you so much for this great conversation and blessings on the work that you do. It's so important. And the book that you wrote to help people take those ideas that they're dreaming, thinking about, and putting them in action and manifest them into ideas that the world benefits from because those ideas come out.
Thank you so much, Keith. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for, again, creating this space for people to come and share ideas and have a conversation. And I really appreciate the invite and the conversation. So thank you so much.
Well, blessings anytime, my friend.
All right. Thank you.